Now you told me that poor little 4-year-old little girl with the long hair, that's a brain tumor also.
Absolutely.
Is she doing the castor?
Yes, and they just came to me. They came to me about 2 weeks ago. In fact, I talked with her dad on the phone from here. They came to me with, you got to imagine this. They are not, we might say, New Age people. He's an attorney. She's a housewife. They're regular people. But they went to the doctor. The kid started exhibiting. 4-year-old girl, gorgeous, blonde hair down to here. She started having paralysis. She started tripping around the house. Took her to the hospital. They said massive, aggressive, malignant tumor on her brainstem. They said we cannot do surgery, and they said that with chemotherapy and radiation, they gave her 3 months to live. If she did chemo and radiation. Without that...
Even if she did?
Yeah, and with steroids. They wanted to put her on steroids, and they did put her on steroids. They came to see me, and I said, well, why are you coming to see me? And they said, we don't want to do that. If the best they're offering is 3 months with all that chemo and all that radiation... That's not a good deal, is it? It's not a good deal.
Okay, so she's getting better.
She walked in my office with her parents. The first thing I noticed was all this gorgeous blonde hair. I mean, what do you think would have happened to that child's immune system if they would have had all their hair removed with the chemotherapy and radiation?
Right. How long did it take in this little girl? Are they different to older people in brain tumors? Their metabolism? How fast before a little girl notices something?
Well, we right now, where we're at, because this is a story in progress here, right now she is off all her steroids. We did a wean down program, and I suggest everybody on drugs.
To get her off it?
We took 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks to get her on a wean down program, just about to now, where she's on no Decadron, which is a steroid drug. The swelling in her body, of course, that drug made her, she was swelling all over the place. Getting off that drug made the swelling go down, and she's on everything. If any of people that are listening to this are wimping out with this program, I'm going to tell you right now, this 4-year-old girl is doing 6 cloves of garlic a day mashed up and put in avocados. She's doing her regeneration tonic.
She's taking all the teas that an adult would take?
She's on an adult dose of superfood. She's drinking beet juice, spinach juice, and her parents are just being real straight with her. They're saying there's a tumor in your head, and this is what's going to get rid of it. And I also let her know that if she was good and she did all this, that later on this was not going to be the rest of her life, because kids sometimes focus just on what's going on today.
Why'd you give her those juices?
Because they build the blood, and we'll talk about that in the whole program. She's doing hot and cold showers twice a day, castor oil packs twice a day. She's getting body work to the head and to the neck to stimulate that.
What do you mean? The parents are trying to massage her?
The parents are massaging herself. They didn't know where to go, so I got them working. You know, anybody can extend some love and some squeezing. You don't have to have a license to do body work. I mean, everybody knows how to hug and squeeze and knead, and that makes everybody feel better.
No, I know. You say she's better, and her parents probably do. What does the little girl have to say right now?
She still has a little paralysis, but it's not as bad. Her family is behind it, and she's a happy camper. And I don't know if
Does she know she is better? Does she ever say, Mommy, I'm better?
Not quite yet, but imagine where she'd be if she would underwent that therapy. Imagine what she'd feel like on chemotherapy. She'd be horrified. They'd have her strapped to, you know what a CAT scan's like? They strap you to a table and put you in a spinning tunnel. I mean, this horrifies children. Medical procedures horrify adults, let alone children.
But she's better than even. She is on the way.
Oh, absolutely. She's on the way, and I absolutely believe she's going to have a healing, and so do her parents and her grandparents.
So you know what these cases prove? Because, like I said, brain cancer is so frightening that if you can get brain cancer, that almost proves there are no incurable diseases. If the castor oil didn't work, just absolutely didn't work, what else would you do? What else could you do?
The BF&C. That's Dr. Christopher's famous formula for putting over the head and down the spine. You use it the same way you do the castor oil. You can even alternate the castor oil with the BF&C treatment.
And both of those would penetrate the skull.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Anything else as options for people? Because they're out there, they'll never meet you, and things they can try. One doesn't work, try the other. That's a good question. If you can't get the BF&C, if you just use one of the 2 herbs or 1 or 2 herbs that are in it. I mean, I would put garlic paste on my head, diluted, before I'd give up. The key here is don't use any excuses not to do the program. You mean try something?
Anything. Anything and everything.
Have you ever used cayenne on the head?
Absolutely. I've had people rub cayenne powder into their hair. I've had them put cayenne tincture on their head. I've even had many people put my heating balm on their head, which is a bit intense.
What is that, like Bengay, or is
yeah,
worse?
but it's natural and it's much stronger. It has cayenne, ginger, mustard in it. It's very penetrating. I even had people put it in their ears, and after they got done screaming for about 10 minutes, it was dramatic, the healing that took place. Now, I'm not necessarily suggesting that's one for everybody.
Right, but it has been done.
Oh, absolutely. We have to get that circulation increased to
no matter what it takes.
No matter what it takes.
Well, let's go on to bone cancer. To me, that's number 2 as far as frightening, because again, it's you can't just cut a little hole, pop that tumor out. It's your bones itself.
Yeah, and of course your bone marrow is where every cell, every blood cell is made. Every white blood cell, every red blood cell.
That's easy to forget.
Yeah, every blood cell in your body starts off in the bone marrow. That's the bottom line. So of course when you're talking bone cancer or leukemia, and we'll get into that in a minute, we're talking pretty much a death sentence here. Rarely does a doctor say, oh, you're going to live another 40 years.
So it's not just the bone is in trouble.
No.
The blood is in trouble.
The blood and the blood manufacturing, absolutely. This is why sometimes they do bone marrow transplants. They take your bone marrow out. By the way, for many Americans, that procedure's $150,000 to $300,000, not covered by most insurance plans. Patients don't know that, doctors don't tell them, and hundreds of people in this country have had their houses taken away from them because they couldn't pay for their bone surgery. Even after the relative died, the family still gets their house taken away. That's how awful it is.
Tell us about some of your success, or
okay.
what you've done with bone cancer.
I had a man come to me with the worst case of bone cancer I'd ever seen. He was an executive. He came to me, but he didn't come to me for bone cancer.
What did he come for?
He came to me for a bladder infection. He had had prostate cancer that had metastasized. They carved out his prostate. It had metastasized to his bladder. They took out his bladder and remade a bladder in him out of pieces of his colon. They had cut off his testicles. He couldn't get an erection, so they put a plastic pump in his penis so he could get an erection. Now, this is a man that had been carved up incredibly. Now he had such infections from the surgery, the antibiotics didn't work anymore. And he wanted to know if there was any... Now, he also had bone cancer on 90% of the bones in his body, the worst case I'd seen. But he figured he was going to die. He just wanted to know if he could pee once.
He didn't want you to help him.
Oh, no. He just wanted to know if he could pee once good before he died. That's all he wanted to do was stop. He said that. Yeah, absolutely. Stop the bladder infection. Well, of course we stopped the bladder infection immediately because I've never, ever seen herbs fail for killing the bacteria in the urinary tract. Ever. Ever. I just want to say that right now. So everybody out there who's hearing this that has a bladder infection or urinary tract infection, I have never seen the urinary tract herbs fail, ever.
And that was herbs like juniper berries,
juniper berry, corn silk, parsley, wild carrot, and they're just wonderful, wonderful herbs for destroying that infection.
Okay, so you cleared that up on him.
That's right, and he was thrilled. He left a message.
When did you tell him we could do more? Oh, go ahead.
I told him the first visit, and he was like, look, he goes, you know, he just didn't believe it. He goes, you know, I'm not even looking for that. He goes, I just want to get rid of my bladder infection. And he says, in 2 days, he left a message on my machine that said, I can't believe it. He was shouting. He goes, you cleared up a bladder infection that no doctors or no antibiotics could touch. He goes, this is a miracle. And I called him back and I said, it's only the beginning. I said, we're going to do the bone cancer. And then I could hear him thinking, you know, because no doctors or antibiotics could fix the bladder infection. Now I know he's thinking. I got him intrigued. He came in my office and we started to work. He went through fevers. He went through fevers that went on and on and on.
Now, fevers that happened, or you deliberately caused?
We cause them. You know, when the immune system is charged up, your body's going to heat up.
I mean, you triggered those fevers.
Oh, absolutely. The cold sheet treatment, and we'll go into that later, triggers fevers. Okay, this is the whole idea. Dr. Christopher said we want to incubate the body. We want to heat it up. He had fevers. He dramatically changed his food program. We made the major food programs. He was anemic. He got so anemic, he turned white. His skin was almost translucent. We put him on high iron juices.
Anemic from the cancer in the bone.
Many people with bone cancer, because again, the bones is where the blood is made. So when you have cancer there, you're not making blood, and you get anemic. And so it's always important that we do the juices and the herbs and the foods for being anemic, the high iron foods. We brought him out of that anemia in 3 days.
3 days?
Yeah, 3 days. But you got to use the foods, the high iron foods. One of the greatest is beets and beet greens. Run them through that juicer, one of our greatest. And think of your dark fruits, anything that's purple or blue or red, raspberries, blueberries, boysenberries, cherries, all high iron foods.
And that's what turned the blood around.
Absolutely. One of the highest iron foods is sea vegetables, is dulse and kelp, but dulse is even the best. High iron, sunflower seeds. One of the highest foods in iron. 3 ounces of sunflower seeds will give you twice the iron you need for the whole day. A powerful iron food. So the juices, the iron foods, and even the iron herbs. There are herbs that are very high in iron, like yellow dock. The high iron herbs, and the blood-building herbs. Herbs to build up the blood.
Such as?
Red clover. A great.
So you gave him all the red clover
Absolutely.
herbs.
And superfood. I've talked about that, but I use plants that are the highest sources of vitamins, minerals, iron.
And you combine them into one food.
Absolutely. Alfalfa, a vitamin mineral herb. We powered them up. 3 days the anemia was gone. I'm not, this is a good point that I should make here. Nobody goes from disease to health in a straight line.
Okay, you're talking about building the blood. Tell us about what herbs could be used to help build the blood up.
There's some great herbs that help build the blood. Not only yellow dock, that was one of Dr. Christopher's favorite because of its high iron content. And of course, we're looking at iron and mineral-rich herbs. Dulse and kelp. We can't forget those. 2 very important seaweeds, sea vegetables.
Well, which is better, dulse or kelp?
Dulse is highest in iron, and they grow in the ocean, and they just absorb the minerals out of the ocean. They're incredibly rich in iron and minerals to build the blood. Classics are alfalfa. I mean, look at a horse. A horse almost eats a mono diet of alfalfa now, and look at how big they grow. 1,500 pounds of muscle. Alfalfa is the vitamin mineral herb, and almost identical to alfalfa is barley. And the grasses are best if you can get the grasses before it's even turned into a plant. Just the young alfalfa and barley grass. And another
barley grass. How do you make barley grass?
Barley grass, you can just grind it up, powder it up. You can mix it.
Wait a minute. Would you germinate the barley?
Yeah, you just germinate like you would alfalfa, but let it go beyond a sprout and let it actually turn into grass.
How big?
Similar to wheatgrass, about this high. You can let it grow 6 inches to a foot high, and you can grow it yourself. Alfalfa grass, barley grass, and wheatgrass is also terrific, very strengthening to the blood, builds the blood. It is almost identical to human blood in analysis, but also it's detoxifying. Wheatgrass is powerful at detoxifying. I helped a person start a wheatgrass juice business, and within months there were 100 people outside their door in the morning with their cup waiting to get their wheatgrass juice. Tumors out their neck that had gone away. Wheatgrass is a powerful detoxifying tool.
So you had this gentleman do certain of these things?
Absolutely. He did the blood-building foods, the blood-building herbs, and also what's very important are the immune-stimulating herbs, even more when you have blood diseases. Echinacea, the classic, and not only taking the echinacea tincture, but also I had him boiling the root himself. Now it's important, remember, most of the echinacea products in the market don't work, so get good quality ones that make your mouth tingle.
I mean, that's one thing they've got to look for. It's got to have that puckering effect.
Absolutely. And it's also, you want that in the root if you get the root.
How do you get the root? Are they available?
Yes, you can buy the root. You can buy the fresh echinacea roots, the dried echinacea roots. You take that root, we cut it into about 1 inch or half-inch pieces and just boil it in water. We make a decoction like we talked about earlier. You simmer that for 15 minutes. It makes a very potent tea. Drink that tea all day long. Drink it for a week. Take a couple days off. Drink it for another week, and keep doing that till you're well.
Would you soak it overnight first?
Absolutely. Soak it. Let that root swell up. And you can use the tincture too. And it's important. Not only is your tincture of high quality, but you must use a certain amount. I would suggest a minimum of 2 dropperfuls or 60 drops of tincture 3 times a day. That's a starting point. You need that much just to begin to assimilate.
But in a case like him, it's ready to die.
Oh, absolutely.
How much?
We 6 times a day, 2 to 3 dropperfuls 6 times a day. Double up that minimum dosage I give you. Again, the problem with most people is they don't take enough herbs.
Why, if they're that ill, would they not take enough?
It's because dosages, people are so afraid to put a powerful dosage on an herb bottle.
I mean, what do they think it's going to kill them? They already have cancer.
Echinacea has been used for 300 years in this country. The Indians used it. There are no toxic chemicals in echinacea. There's no toxic amount. You can't take too much echinacea. You can eat it like food. So there's no worries with taking massive amounts of echinacea.
Now, I believe you said you had fevers on this gentleman, and you caused fevers. So
Absolutely.
you used the echinacea to help with that?
Echinacea, when you think of a fever, think of echinacea. It's a specific, because...
To kill the fever or to do what?
No, to stimulate your immune system even more, because when you have a fever, remember we mentioned before, it's your body's defensive mechanism to stimulate your white blood cells to eat more and to move quicker through your body. And of course, echinacea is an immune stimulant, so you're just helping your immune system when you use echinacea.
Okay, but you've got to use these kind of amounts.
Absolutely.
Or you're just playing with the disease.
Absolutely. Americans tend to not use enough herbs, enough natural remedies, enough juices. Remember I said a gallon a day. Americans just don't use enough.
Yeah, you didn't say 2 cups a day.
That's right, a gallon. That's 128 ounces. That's an 8-ounce glass every hour you're awake.
Okay, what happened with this man with his bone cancer? The pain, I know, has got to be bad.
Yeah, the pain is bad, and you just have to work with people with the pain. But what happened with his pain? It got better, and it got better. He finally wanted to go in and get another bone scan. Totally gone. He had no bone cancer visible. The first time he went in for a bone scan, it had reduced, and the second time in, it was totally gone.
Well, how long are we talking about now?
We're talking a 4-month period. His bone cancer was gone.
4 months, like overnight.
This was not only the worst case of bone cancer I had seen, but the results were dramatic. And he, you know, he still felt a little beat up, okay?
What do you mean, sore?
Oh, yeah, sore. And the scans were clean, though. They said there's no active bone cancer in your body at all, 0. He still had some intermittent fevers, so beyond what the doctors could detect, there was still some cleansing to do. I mean, remember, this man had prostate cancer, bladder cancer. I guarantee you there was cancer in areas of his body that the doctors didn't even know about. He was riddled. They had given up. And he's a well man now, and he's still alive, and he's
What does he say
work.
to you?
He's amazed. He came to my house for the holidays. We talk to each other often. He's a believer now. And you know what happens to these people? He can't help himself. He's selling natural healing everywhere he goes. His friends, relatives, he's even made people mad at work. He brings the herbs into work, and he makes the people that work for him eat the herbs, drink the superfood. He tortures a lot of his friends and relatives.
Now, you realize, don't you, that what you're saying, if a medical doctor were to hear this, he'd say this is dangerous quackery, because this guy Schultze is going to cause innocent people to postpone or delay urgently needed medical care for this bunch of garbage.
Most of the people that come to see me, they're in that bad a shape because they've worked with the medical doctors. Medical doctors have caused so many of these problems in the first place. I mean, we know that medications are carcinogenic.
So they're not avoiding doctors, they have come from the doctors.
Oh, they've come from the doctors. No one calls me at the first sign of illness. Hi, Dr. Schultze, I haven't been feeling well. I'm the last call. I'm the I'm the person they call when they've tried everything else. They've taken every bottle. Their closets, their drawers are filled with prescription drugs and
the
vitamins.
doctor said, it's over.
It's over. It's over. They said, go home and get your house in order. And then they call me on the telephone.
Richard, why don't you tell us about your experiences in curing colon cancer?
You know, colon cancer is not only the #1 cancer among men and women together, but it's not just adults. One of the first experiences I had with colon cancer was really a story from a mom. Her daughter, 15-year-old daughter, had developed colon cancer. The doctors immediately did a colostomy and put a bag on her ileum. It was actually called an ileostomy. And if the listeners don't know what that is, they basically remove your entire bowel and put a bag that you glue on your stomach at the end of your small intestine, and your fecal matter just on its own. It isn't even fecal matter. It's just like watery stool comes out into that bag, and you have to change that bag and clean that bag and glue it on your body. They did this to a 15-year-old. They said it was a simple surgery. She was at a party afterwards, a Sweet 16 party. She was dancing with her new boyfriend. Her bag came unglued, fecal matter spilled all over her party dress, and she killed herself. She went home and killed herself. So this is so much for simple surgeries. We can't do this to our children and expect that they'll have a normal life. We can't be cutting their body parts away. So shortly after that situation, a mom called me on Tuesday. Her 11-year-old son was scheduled for a colostomy on Friday, and this was pretty good because they gave me 3 days.
3 days?
Yeah, usually I don't get that much time. And she said, is there anything that can be done? And I said, absolutely. We started her son on massive doses of intestinal corrective, and we'll go into dosages in a little bit.
Okay.
Intestinal corrective formula number 1. He hadn't had a bowel movement in a month. We started him on massive doses of that formula, used some enemas, and in 24 hours she called me and she said a piece of fecal matter came out of her son that was as big from her elbow to the tips of her fingers, as big around as her forearm. She said it was so big it ripped his rectum, and it was so hard it wouldn't flush down the toilet. They had to chop it up with a shovel to get it to flush. Okay, the bottom line is that kid's got his colon today. Okay, and this is a colon that the doctors wanted to just remove on an 11-year-old boy.
Never occurred to them that something simple could be done.
I don't know why. I just don't know why they refuse to use natural remedies. They know they work. They just won't use them.
Well, what do you do
it's
in
not
these
a lot of money,
cases?
and one bottle of intestinal corrective formula is $16. Colon rectal surgery, we're talking thousands. Maybe that's the answer. I don't know.
Who knows? What do you do in these kind of cases?
Okay, the first thing is you've got to get that bowel clean and working. And many people just don't think it can be done. They've used laxatives. They've used herbs to open and clean the bowel. And again, we go back to, we've talked about...
Because they think they already know all this.
Oh, they think they know it, and they think that their bowel just isn't going to work. The problem is they haven't used enough. They haven't used it strong enough. Herbs will clean that bowel and get it working, and I guarantee that they just need stronger formulas. We talked about the intestinal corrective formula earlier.
Anything particular when they've got cancer coming on or actually there?
Absolutely. Besides just using herbs to stimulate that bowel to get it clean, we need to put herbs and foods right in the rectum. We need to not only do enemas, but we need to introduce things right into the colon itself. You need to do what's called a high enema, and we can explain that later. But we need to put nutritional herbs into the bowel like aloe vera, which are healing herbs. We need to put garlic solutions in the bowel, which destroy the cancer tumors. If we're going to use large amounts, we make them quite mild. A clove or two of garlic.
In how much water?
It's lightly heated and chopped up into 2 quarts of water, and introduce that into the whole bowel. A little garlic goes a long way in the bowel. We need to use the herbs like chaparral and red clover in enemas and high enemas and get them into the bowel. If there's bleeding, we need to get in there with the cayenne.
How?
We make a cayenne tea and put it right in the rectum. I've used cayenne in every orifice of the body.
Doesn't it burn like crazy?
Absolutely. It burns like crazy, but it stops the bleeding. That's the bottom line. I've used cayenne in first aid applications vaginally to stop hemorrhaging. Yes, it burns, but when you have a serious condition, you don't worry about burning. That burning is actually a healing taking place.
Not scarring. It's just
not
a temporary burn.
Not at all. No one's ever been burnt, really burnt, by cayenne pepper. Never.
Okay. When you say aloe in the colon, what kind of aloe? You're talking commercially available juice?
Get
what are you
the best.
About?
Aloe, unfortunately, is has been so bastardized on the market. It's horrible.
And everything.
Oh yeah, I mean, I see these formulas that say 98% pure aloe. People think that that's 98% aloe vera. No, it's only 2% aloe vera, but the aloe vera they're using is 98% pure aloe vera. Okay. You know, because I look at these, green and blue gels that look like hair setting gel.
Right.
That's not aloe vera. You have to get your own aloe vera cactus, and everybody can have them. You can grow them in your house.
So when you're talking about cancer, you can say, forget those preparations.
Oh, forget those preparations. I don't know a good aloe vera preparation on the market. I don't see one. So they got to
get the plant,
you get the
grow
plant,
the plant.
And all you do is you take the leaves and get the oldest, most mature cactus you can get. Not these ones with little leaves like this. Get the biggest aloe vera cactuses you can get. If you live in northern cold climates, it doesn't grow around you. Buy the cactuses, keep them in your house in the sunlight. If you live in a warmer climate, aloe vera cactus can grow outside. You cut the leaf off. You take the edges. You fillet it like a fish, and inside there's
just the gel.
There's just a gel. That's all you want.
So how much gel to how much water?
You can fill your bowel up with just straight gel. It depends on how serious your condition is, and that is a terrific healer for the bowel. What does it do? It heals. It makes aloe is considered a cell pluriferant. It contains allantoin, similar to comfrey. It makes your body repair 3 to 10 times faster than it normally would.
And that's critical.
Oh, it's powerful because we're working with time here. Aloe is powerful. You can also put wheatgrass juice directly into your bowel, or any green juice, any chlorophyllous juice, directly into your bowel. You can fill your whole bowel up with that.
So now if you have people doing enemas and implants, you must separate them, right? Because you don't want to wash an implant out.
Absolutely. So you do the enema first to clean the fecal matter out, even a rectal enema, then a high enema.
Just warm water?
Just warm water. But why use warm water when you can add herbs in there? Red raspberry. If your bowel tends to get crampy, a little catnip tea as that enema works brilliantly.
What if there's a tumor in there? Any particular kind of thing?
Well, first we're getting the bowel clean,
so
and
red
now
now
we're putting something in for the tumor, and that of course would be chaparral.
Okay.
If the bowel's really spastic, lobelia tea will stop that bowel spasm. You just don't want to make that tea really strong. Chaparral is the greatest for the tumors. Wheatgrass juice is brilliant. It's famous in colon therapy clinics around the world.
And when you say enema versus high enema, they do a regular enema first, and
and
then what you call a high enema?
Yeah, and a high
what
enema.
Is that?
A high enema means that you're introducing water beyond the rectum into the sigmoid, descending, transverse, and ascending colon. It takes a little practice, and we're going to give the instructions in the manual on how to give a high enema at home.
That's great.
It's best if you have a friend.
Okay.
Two people doing an enema, one helping the other, works much better.
Now, you told me you had a man who actually had a grapefruit-sized tumor
absolutely.
right in his colon.
He came to see me with a malignant tumor in his colon the size of a grapefruit. And, of course, they wanted to do surgery. He didn't like that idea. Again, a family history of cancer.
How could you have something the size of a grapefruit and not have a total blockage? The colon isn't as wide as a grapefruit.
There wasn't much coming out. He was having some liquids, but it's amazing what people have. I've had people with liver tumors the size of footballs. We'll talk about that later. I agree with you. I'm always amazed. I'm amazed at how well the human body will continue to work while there's massive degeneration in the system. It always amazes me. But sure enough, he was still alive, walking, talking. In fact, he was feeling great. He didn't even have any swelling that you could really see or detect.
Look at him?
No, he looked like he was in great shape, even felt pretty good. But
how did he know then?
Yeah, well, on a regular exam with the doctors. But here's the thing I want to add right here. Everybody says they had no signs at all of their disease. Give me 10 minutes with them. We'll come up with 100 warning signs that they ignored.
Well, for instance?
Oh, this person had constipation his whole life and didn't do anything about it.
Nobody would relate one to the other.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. We relate that. We know. Constipation is a sign of illness. We need to get that bowel working. When that bowel's constipated, anything and everything can happen.
Well, what else could be a warning sign that they don't think is
headaches. He ignored headaches. He used to have frequent headaches. But Americans swallow 250 million tablets of aspirin a day. Does this sound like a group of people that are listening to their body talking back to them? Listening to that communication? We say, just say no to drugs to kids, and they laugh at us because we're a bunch of adult drug addicts.
So people are saying, this hit me out of the blue. All of a sudden I
They
have
always
colon
say
cancer.
that, but then give me 10 minutes, and again, we find 40, 50, 100 things that they ignored. And of course he ignored slight abdominal pain, digestive problems, bloating of the stomach after meals.
Okay, so he comes to you.
He comes to me.
Anything would you do for him that we haven't covered, or
yes, a few other things. Now, we love that castor oil fomentations, those castor oil packs. Now we want to put them over the liver and the entire abdomen.
The whole thing.
The whole thing. Cover it from the genitals, the pubic bone, all the way up. You can even put it on the low back. And remember, the colon extends up under our ribs slightly. So go right up over the rib cage, and we're doing the liver, go all the way up this side. No shortage on the castor oil here. All night long.
And if they didn't do castor oil, you'd do an herb there. You'd do something,
absolutely. Right? And hot and cold on this area.
Okay, very
Stimulate
important.
That bowel a couple times a day. Hot and cold therapy all over the bowel.
What herbs would you use if you didn't have castor oil, or just for some reason it didn't work, or whatever?
Right. Herbs to stimulate the circulation. In other words, to stimulate more blood flow to that area. A classic is cayenne. You can use cayenne plasters. You can use mustard plasters.
Plasters. That's
yeah,
a new one.
You can
cayenne, what's a cayenne plaster?
Well, basically, we would do like what we could call a fomentation. You just make a nice hot broth of cayenne tea. You make a cayenne tea in a big pot, put a towel in it, and put that right over your abdomen. Now, that'll feel fine for a few minutes. 15 minutes later to an hour later, you're going to get a little wake-up call. It's going to feel very hot. There's nothing you can do about it. Ride with it. It won't hurt you.
How much cayenne out of how much water?
Let's make it simple. A handful. A handful of cayenne and a gallon of water.
Okay.
Heat that up in a big pot, and then dip your towels into it. Now, if you want to make it a little more powerful, add a handful of ginger. And if you want to go all the way with Dr. Christopher's formula, add a handful of ground mustard seeds to it, too. And you'll have, you won't turn the furnace off. You won't need any heat in the house tonight. It'll warm you right up.
How long does it stay on before you take it off?
I would at least keep it on for 45 minutes to an hour. And if you want, you can do the hot towel on there for 5 minutes, take it off, put an ice pack on your abdomen. Take that off after about 5 minutes, put that hot towel back on. Do alternate an ice pack and the hot towel with the cayenne, ginger mustard in it, and alternate that for an hour. Wow, does that increase your circulation?
In other words, you seem to hit it from every direction. You don't leave anything uncovered.
You have to. You know, I'm not working with people at the onset of a disease. I'm working with most people that after they're supposed to be dead. You don't leave anything out. You fill your day and your night up with programs.
In other words, what you're afraid of is if there's something you didn't do, you might run out of time, and it's over.
Absolutely. And why would I want to do less for someone? I want to give them so many programs. These are the calls I get. They go, Dr. Schultze, they go, it's midnight and I've only done half my program. Good. Speed it up tomorrow. Do you know what I'm saying? I always want to give everybody more than I know they could possibly complete in a day. Now I know
that's not a reason or excuse for not doing it.
Oh, absolutely not. I want to give people so many programs. They had to put lists on their refrigerator. 8 o'clock, do this. 8:15, do this. I want to fill up their day. What do we have to lose? The doctors have given up on them.
What happened to this man?
He got well. He had started some bleeding from the bowel. I said, don't worry. We used a little cayenne just in case.
Cayenne how?
Cayenne rectally and internally.
Okay.
And rectally, it's intense, I'll tell you. You know, putting cayenne in the bowel. But, you know, just because we have rectal or brain or liver surgery, don't think that isn't intense. You're just sleeping. Okay, these therapies are powerful. They will have powerful healings. He started discharging from the bowel what looked like pieces of hunks of liver. Dark brown tissue started coming out, with his bowel movements.
What do you think that was?
It was the cancer. He took it to the doctor and had it examined, and it was the cancer tissue.
Dark?
Yeah,
tissue.
And then one day, he had an explosive bowel movement, and handfuls of this tissue came out of his bowel. And again, he took that to the doctor, and it was the cancer. The long and short of it is he healed his bowel. We did some healing afterwards, like I mentioned, with the aloe veras. He finally went back to the doctors, and they did a sigmoid scope, and they said, well, the tumor's gone, but you still have polyps. He had 35 bowel polyps.
Right.
We went to work on those. We used some other herbs.
What'd you do for those, since you mentioned it?
We used the intestinal corrective formula number 2.
Okay.
We added that in, which is a formula to adhere to the wall of the bowel and pull fecal matter off. We talked about that yesterday. Heavy metals, toxins, poisons. We did some colonics. We did more high herbal enemas. We just carried the program further.
Did that affect the polyps?
Oh, absolutely. He went back and had a sigmoid scope in 2.5 months. There wasn't one polyp in his bowel.
Now, have you helped any people who maybe it wasn't cancer, but colitis or Crohn's disease? That can get out of control too.
I had a woman come to me. She flew down from Northern California. She had the worst case of Crohn's disease I had ever seen. For 10 years, she was having 30 hot, burning, liquid bowel movements a day.
And she wasn't eating cayenne.
She wasn't hardly eating anything. She was 5'8" tall and weighed 90 pounds. In fact, she had become bulimic because she was so afraid of eating what it would happen when it got to her bowel, the pain, the bleeding, the diarrhea, that she was eating her meals and then waiting an hour and throwing them back up because she wanted to absorb some nutrition, but she didn't want it to go through her bowel. She had been running 102 fever for 10 years. Okay, if you can imagine.
Off and on or almost continuous?
Continuously. I had never met anybody that this was happening
What
to.
did the doctors do for the bleeding?
Well, they had cauterized her bowel almost 30 times, gone in with what's like a soldering iron, and just cauterized the blood vessels to stop from bleeding. And she was in tears when I talked to her. She was in tears when she came in my office.
What did she expect from you after 10 years?
Anything. She had heard that I had worked with people with bulimia because I live and practice in what I call the eating disorder capital of the world, Hollywood, okay? And so she just wanted to learn how to control her bulimia. She, again, thought that no one could help her with the Crohn's disease because the doctors had done everything. In fact, she was scheduled for a colostomy 2 years before she came in my office, but she kept refusing the surgery. And they said, we just got to cut that bowel out and put a bag on you. But for some reason, she wouldn't do that. And she came to see me, and the first thing we did, she said, I'm on fire. And the first thing I think about when you're on fire is put that fire out. And I took her into the bathroom, I inverted her, and I filled her colon with olive oil.
Turned her upside down.
Yeah, with olive oil and aloe vera. And when I did that, because I turned her upside down, and I not only put it in her rectum, I put it in her whole bowel, and I saw her face go.
Why?
She said, that's the first time I've smiled in 10 years.
Well, why would that happen?
Because it put the fire out. You can imagine how raw, how bleeding, how sore that bowel was. And now we're coating it with aloe vera. I mean, aloe vera is a first aid treatment for burns. She was burnt up, not only from the acids in those 30 bowel movements a day, but the doctors had burned her purposely in her bowel, kept burning her to seal it off. And the tissue was just starting to fall apart.
And why the olive oil?
The olive oil because it's soothing. It's soothing and coating, and it's nutritional. And the aloe vera because aloe vera puts the fire out. And the expression on her face, she smiled and then she went into tears again. And she says, I can't believe this. And I said, we're going to get your bowel working perfectly. You're going to get rid of this Crohn's disease, which is considered to be a genetic bowel disease.
It can even be terminal.
Oh, yeah. And we're going to make this bowel work again. And we did. But this type of person, colitis, Crohn's disease, they don't need obviously bowels to make herbs to make their bowel more active. They certainly don't need laxative or cathartic herbs. They need the soothers, the absorbers.
Did you ever do this again, the olive oil with her?
Oh, absolutely.
How often?
She moved down to Los Angeles. She canceled her plane flight, moved into a hotel near my clinic, and lived there for 3 weeks. The next day we did flaxseed oil, and then
well, you again inverted her.
Absolutely.
And you put in what, a cup?
We put in 2 quarts of flaxseed oil. Don't get cheap on this,
Okay.
People think, now if you can't get flaxseed oil, just use flax seeds. Make a flaxseed tea. Take those flax seeds, throw them in a coffee grinder.
Again, what would be the purpose?
Flax is one of the most soothing herbs, Linum utitatissimum, that's the Latin name. Flax is a brilliant herb. It's the highest source known of omega-3 and omega-6 essential fatty acids.
So it's a healing herb.
Oh, it's healing. It's mucilaginous. You put you grind a handful of flax seeds and put them in a cup, add water, come back in an hour, and you have a paste sitting there. It's mucilaginous.
So
it's
you
beautiful.
put this in, again, people out there who are all going to want to know details, how often?
Okay, we did that twice a day. We filled that bowel twice a day.
With the same thing or different things?
We kept moving around. We used aloe sometimes, we used olive oil sometimes, and we used the flax and also slippery elm, teas, gruels.
Orally or into the rectum?
Right into the rectum. I mean, why wait? Why kid around? Why go through feet of digestive tract? We want to get it in that bowel. Now, again, you can't get some of this stuff because it's got too much solid material in with an enema bag.
So what do you do?
A rectal syringe. Every drugstore in this country you can buy what's called a rectal syringe. It has a little bigger opening. It's a bulb about this big, and it has a syringe coming out the end. And you just take the top off. You fill it with that flaxseed tea, that slippery elm tea. Try to make it as smooth and blended as possible. Filter it a little bit, and then just put that into the bowel. The aloe vera.
How long do you leave it in?
As long as it can stay. She used to go through cramps, and I would hold her down on the floor and say,
trying to hold that in?
Yeah, try to hold it in. And if at first do a little enema, and if their bowel is too crampy, again, a catnip enema works wonderful, or a very mild lobelia enema will stop.
What is a very mild lobelia enema?
A very mild lobelia enema would be a teaspoon of lobelia herb to a 2 to 4 quarts of water.
Okay, how did she progress out of this then?
Well, the bowel stopped being spastic. It started getting soothed, and of course, immediately, the intestinal number 2 formula will absorb the bowel material. It'll turn that diarrhea into a solid bowel movement. Of course, when she started having solid bowel movements, and we got them, I would say within 3 to 4 days, her bowel movements were starting to get solid. Within a week.
3 to 4 days?
Oh, yeah. Within a week.
After 10 years?
Oh, yeah. After 10 years. Turnarounds can be dramatically fast. Dramatically fast. We had her having normal bowel movements. So at the end of 7 days, she was having 3 to 4 bowel movements a day. And she was absolutely blissed out. Now, we have some work still to do, but we got that bowel material solidified.
Then, taking it from there, what did you do? Anything unusual or just a regular program?
Yeah, the regular program that we've talked about for the bowels, we talked about with the bowel tumor.
Richard, how did it end up with that girl with colitis?
Happily ever after. 3 weeks after I worked with her, she went back to her hometown, got married, had children, and I've kept in contact with her. She's never had a problem since. She's made the modifications in her lifestyle. She's fine.
That's beautiful. Tell me, do you have any final advice you want to give for people out there with serious colitis? And
don't go to your doctor. Basically, you know, like anything, you can heal it. Modifications in your lifestyle, using the herbs, using the treatments. You know, don't go to your doctor. Doctors have a license to carve. I always tell my patients if they are going to go to the doctor to put Post-its on all parts of their body that say do not remove, because once you sign that form, they can do anything they want. Leukemia, blood cancer, obviously, you know, again, another very serious cancer. The prognosis is horrible. Many people are told they have no time left. Again, you know, write the will, get the house in order. I had a man come to me with oat cell leukemia. He was given less than 6 months to live. I used to call him Mr. 275. He weighed 275. His cholesterol level was 275. His systolic blood pressure was 275. Probably in the most horrible shape, or one of the most horrible shapes of any client that's ever come to see me. And I was shocked that the doctors didn't say anything about his health. They just looked at his blood under a microscope and basically said, you have leukemia, you're going to die. They didn't notice that he was 120 pounds overweight and a very sick individual.
They figure, what would that have to do with cancer?
I know. This is why, you know, they'll never, ever find a cure for cancer, because cancer is systemic and the cure is getting healthy. The cure for every disease is just getting healthy, and the disease wants to leave your body.
So what do you do in a case like that to bring him out of that leukemia?
Well, the first thing is get him healthy. I mean, you know, your body will respond dramatically when you get healthy. So we got rid of all the 275s, the weight, the cholesterol, the blood pressure, got him on a good food program, an excellent food program, did the juice fasting, did all the programs. But there's a few specifics. When you have blood cancer, and this will be very similar to when we just talked about bone cancer.
Okay.
When you have blood cancer, you need to get into that bloodstream with the detoxifying herbs. Red clover, chaparral, the classic blood cleansers. It's so important.
Toxicity in the environment can be a problem. You had one man that had leukemia.
Oh, absolutely. He had leukemia and he worked in a paint factory. And I told him in order for me to work with him and to be well, he had to quit his job. And this is something that we all have to be willing to do. Remember, when we're talking the Incurables program, we're talking about 100%. We're not talking about 90%. We're not even talking about 99%. You have to be willing to put the Incurables program ahead of everything else in your life. Your job, your family, your husband or your wife, your children, whatever, you, probably for the first time in this person's life, have to make themselves the most important thing and direct their energy right back at themselves with this program in order to get well. And so I have to tell many people, if they have a toxic job, they have to leave it. I've had people that have worked in the casinos in Las Vegas with all that cigarette smoke, out of there. Okay. I've had people that are in toxic, what I call toxic relationships, where they fight and argue with the person they live with. They're not going to get better. You've got to get out of there. Okay. I've had patients that have their children living with them that are 35 and 40 years old, and they're arguing all the time. Get the kids out of the house. Some of these people have to go on a retreat, rent a cabin in the woods, but you got to get out of the toxic environment, even when it's a job, even when it's a relationship, relatives,
Don't
family.
people ever, patients or family ever say, Richard, aren't you being too radical?
Oh, absolutely, and this is why a lot of people don't get well. This is why you have herbalists out there and natural healers that'll never touch on the subject.
Richard, don't a lot of people think you are just flat out radical with this advice?
Oh, absolutely, but you know what? What we're talking about here isn't radical at all. If you want to see radical, go in a hospital, watch a brain surgery, watch a coronary bypass surgery where they saw the ribs in half, strip the veins out of the leg, put the heart in a frozen pericardial sac. You know, I mean, this is radical. What we're talking about here is easy, is natural healing. These are simple programs that people can do at home. I mean, all the herbalists and holistic doctors in my field think that I'm nuts. They think that this is incredibly radical. The bottom line is they're gutless. They just don't have the guts to sit there and tell a patient to leave their husband or wife, quit their job, change everything about them, and start drinking some juices and using some herbs.
Well, nothing you say is as radical as a box on the ground.
Oh, absolutely. That's the end. So what do we have to lose? Right. What do we have to lose?
Let's talk about prostate cancer. Have you helped people with that?
Absolutely. I've had numerous people come to me with prostate cancer.
I mean severe prostate cancer.
Oh, absolutely. I had a man that came to see me, an executive. He had a tumor around his prostate that was so big they couldn't find his prostate. They did
Why couldn't they find it?
Because it was encased in this tumor all the way around his prostate. They did 10 needle biopsies of his prostate. All they could find was the tumor. It was malignant. It was cancer. This person basically had given up to the thought of any chance of getting well. The doctors were again suggesting not only removal of the prostate, but removal of the testicles. You have to understand, too, that prostate surgery is very common today. Almost all men over 50 years old are subject to their urologist saying, we need to bring that out.
Cut out his prostate, and then he's cured.
Oh, absolutely. But, you know, this never works. You can't cut away cancer because when you do, it just comes back again. You have to, one of the ways you can tell that you won't get cancer again is by healing the one you got. You don't want to cut away that communication system.
Specifically, what do you recommend for cases of prostate cancer?
Okay, you know, we talked about the hot and cold. Same here, but you're using it between the testicles and the anus.
But is that very hard on those delicate tissues down there?
No, it works great. It's a bit shocking, but it's not hard to do.
No harm caused.
No harm caused at all. That really stimulates the prostate. We want to use enemas too, healing enemas. Get that red clover and chaparral in the bowel again, because the prostate's connected to the rectum. We want to use our kidney bladder formulas because the urethra runs right through the middle of the prostate. So we want to get in the kidney and bladder and do some nice kidney bladder cleansing, including our bowel cleansing too, and also work with some classic prostate herbs like saw palmetto. It's beautiful. It works wonderfully.
But I thought that herb is just for mild, benign prostate. You're talking about cancer.
I had a patient that just used saw palmetto and didn't do anything else and got rid of their prostate cancer. Now, and one more thing, animal foods. One of the things that makes the prostate grow are growth hormones. We have testosterone in our system that makes our prostate grow when we're young. That's what it's for. It's an androgenic steroid. Well, we can eat testosterone, and we eat it every time we eat animal food. Massive amounts of hormones are injected into animals in this country, and not just beef, but chicken, all types of meat. When we eat meat, we're eating hormones that have been injected, and we're eating the hormones that those animals have.
So what are you saying for a prostate case?
Okay, one more
thing. What does it come down to? What do you mean, no meat is what you're saying?
Yeah, and look at a cow. It's a 2,000-pound animal. Imagine what kind of growth hormones are in that animal, and we're taking them into our body. I mean, that'll blow the prostate right up. In fact, Newsweek, the New York Times, everybody's printed red meat and prostate cancer. Everybody's printed that article. It's been all around the country.
Richard, let's talk about the cold sheet treatment. Dr. Christopher has described it. He seemed to think it was very critical. Tell us a little bit about the history of it. Did this just originate, you know, in this century with Dr. Christopher? Or
no, hydrotherapy has been around since the beginning of recorded history. You see it in Persian writings, cold and hot sheet treatments and contrast baths and hydrotherapy. You see it in ancient China and India and Europe in the 15, 16, 1700s. It was gigantic. There was a man called Vincent Priesnitz in Hungary. This is an interesting story. As a child, he had a tremendous fever, 104 degrees, wintertime. He was on his way home, and as he was on his way home from the doctor in town, he crossed a stream, fell through the ice, soaked himself in ice water, and then thought, for sure, I'm going to die, ran home, and by the time he was home, his fever had changed, it was down, his clothes were dry, and he noticed that he felt tremendous. He opened a clinic where all he did with people is set them outside in the cold and wrap them, as they were naked, wrap them in a cold sheet. And eventually, within 10 years, kings and queens and royalty from all over the world were coming to his clinic, and all he did is water fast them and wrap them in cold sheets outside day and night, and cured numerous diseases, every disease of the time people recovered from. What Dr. Christopher did differently was he added herbs to the hydrotherapy. That was the big change, because Dr. Christopher was a great believer in herbs, and he said, hey, why take a bath? Why not take a bath in herb tea? Okay. Why drink hot water? Drink herb tea. Why just use an enema? Use an enema that's made from herb tea. And so he added the herbs to age-old hydrotherapy treatments that are quite famous.
What do you want to emphasize about this that maybe people don't quite understand?
Well, I think that I don't know anybody around that does the cold sheet treatment on anybody. Right. And I've given hundreds of them. So as far as I know, I'm the only living authority on the cold sheet treatment.
Do you consider it optional in incurable diseases, or what?
No. I think that everybody with an incurable disease needs to do the cold sheet treatment at least once, if not once a week, once a month, whatever they can take and tolerate.
You mean that often?
Oh, absolutely. It's a brilliant, brilliant treatment.
So this is essential part of the routine.
Absolutely. I wouldn't leave it out of anybody with the incurable diseases. Just remember, you have to take a look at the person's energy level, how much they can take.
Yeah, is it too much for a weak person?
No, not at all. Just, you know, you can lessen the intensity of every aspect of the cold sheet treatment. Just do what the person can tolerate. But it's a very intense treatment. I think this is something that people don't understand. Dr. Christopher was a wonderful, wonderful man, but he was very intense. For instance, when you drank the yarrow tea in the cold sheet treatment, people said, well, how much do I have to drink, or when do I know if I've had enough? And he said, well, tip your head to the side, and if it doesn't pour out, have another cup. This sounds kind of cute and anecdotal, but the bottom line is when someone's sitting in the bathtub crying and saying and throwing up and saying, I can't drink more tea, clean her stomach for the next dose.
In other words, what you're saying, he just pushed to the edge.
You push. You keep that firm pressure up constantly during the cold sheet treatment.
You don't wimp out on it.
No. If I could add one thing, I'd suggest that you always have a bottle of cayenne tincture in your pocket, because numerous people have thought or threatened to pass out on me in the tub because you're in a tub of incredibly hot water filled with cayenne, ginger, and mustard, drinking massive amounts of diaphoretic or sweat-producing herbal teas, and many people have tried to pass out on me. I've even had people that eyes have rolled up in their head, but here's another Dr. Schultz guarantee. Nobody passes out with a mouthful of cayenne tincture.
It just doesn't happen.
Period. Period.
Is there any other side effects when they're sitting in that hot water?
Sure. Sometimes I've had people cramp up where their fingers and hands have gone into cramps and tetany, incredible painful cramps throughout the body. Lobelia is another nice herb. Usually I have a bottle of cayenne tincture in this pocket and a bottle of lobelia. That makes me a great Thomsonian herbalist. two very important herbs. The lobelia is an antispasmodic.
So you just squirt it in their
squirt
mouth.
it in their mouth. It relaxes the whole system. It works beautifully.
What's the basic? What are you trying to do with the cold sheet? Why such an intense thing?
Well, the herbs stimulate the circulation. The hydrotherapy stimulates the circulation. The diaphoretic herbs clear the poisons out of your blood immediately, right through your skin. But the main purpose is you're creating an artificial fever. Dr. Christopher called it an incubation, but you're creating a fever because remember, when the temperature rises, the white blood cells move faster through your body and eat more of the enemy in your body.
Is there anything else people need to be aware of on this intense program?
Definitely. One of the first steps of the program right after the enema is the garlic injection, where you're taking garlic cloves, apple cider vinegar, and distilled water and injecting it into the rectum. It is incredibly hot. I've always, when I've put that in a person, immediately their face lights up, they might start screaming or yelling and have to get to a toilet immediately. And your job is to try to get them to hold that as long as possible. That's usually about 2 seconds. They let it out, but fortunately some of that material stays in the bowel, and of course that's working from the bowel up to disinfect, cleanse the bowel. Very important step, but a very intense step of the treatment.
It's a shocker.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also the bath. That bath is very intense. You're in a hot bath filled with garlic, ginger, and mustard. And we've talked about those three herbs in hot water before with fomentations. They will light you on fire. So don't fool around when you're putting Vaseline on your genitals in this program. Use the whole jar, or your sex life will be over. I mean, you got to cover your genitals with loads of Vaseline, or that cayenne, ginger, and mustard will get in there. But
even then, people cry from the cayenne on them.
Oh, absolutely. You know, they'll reach a point in this bath where they're hot, and then all of a sudden they'll reach a point where they think their body is lighting on fire. And at that point, I try to keep them in the tub for another 3 to 5 minutes. I try to get one more cup of tea down them. That's the point where you might need the cayenne tincture because they're going to be getting a little bit.
So you're pushing the edge.
That's right. You're pushing the edge, and then you get them out and get them in the ice-cold sheet. And don't fool around with that cold sheet. I'm talking 20 pounds of ice in a bucket with a lot of water in an ice-cold sheet.
I think you told me people even have an emotional release on this program.
Oh, absolutely. I get many people that cry, that sob, that remember things in their past. I mean, it's a full physical and emotional transformation. It's a powerful, powerful treatment.
Have you had any results in cancer?
Oh, unbelievable. I had a man in England that had a throat cancer, and after he did this treatment, there was a 50% reduction in the size of his tumor immediately. After the 4-hour treatment, we could check the tumor size, and it was reduced by 50%.
Okay. Do you use this in your AIDS and cancer cases?
Definitely. It's a significant part of the Incurables program, and everybody needs to use it. And, you know, some people ask me, well, what about children? It can be modified. This program can be modified. You can reduce the amount of herbs in the tub. You can even just use hot water if it's too much. Many people I have that are so weak, I say, just take a hot bath as hot as you can stand it. Drink as much herbal tea, ginger, peppermint, whatever. Get that sweating, get out, take a cold shower, get in your sweats, and get to bed. Now, that would be a very modified version, and that'll make you feel like a new person in the morning.